No, we just,
All right.
that's not an issue.
All right, it's 7:01. Call this meeting to order. I will note that we're being recorded. Thank you very much for coming over to record us. Isabel, just found out that. Okay, that's great. Do we have any public comments? Cynthia? Okay, no public comments. So, we need to review and approve the minutes. We'll start with the Special Education Subcommittee meeting of December 19th. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second?
I'll second to approve.
Discussion? Shall we vote?
We can vote them all at once if you want to.
Oh, all right, so let's do that. Okay, so I'm just going to say that would someone like to make a motion for the meeting minutes?
I'll
Go
move
ahead.
to approve all three. Since I'm the
All
only person
four.
here who was- Are there four of them?
Yep.
We didn't have 4 meetings.
Yeah, we did. We had remember the January 22nd meeting?
Oh, you mean not just the SPED meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, we can't. You're right. Okay.
Sure.
How about if we do the 2 SPED meetings?
Okay, I'll move to approve the 2 SPED meeting minutes.
All right, second.
I will second to approve the Tuesday.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And how about would anyone like to make a motion that we accept the minutes of January 8th, 2020?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Everyone in favor? Anyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and would anyone like to make a motion for the minutes of January 22?
I will make a motion to accept the minutes of January 22nd.
Thank you, Shannon. Any second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Rocking and rolling, boys and girls. I think we have the fabulous Jason who's going to talk to us tonight.
Good evening, Jason. You want to join us up here at the
Yeah.
table? So Jason's coming to us. So we discussed the idea of having students from our student council come and give us an update on a regular basis as to what's going on in school. So Jason was kind enough to volunteer his time and come out today. So thanks for coming out, Jason. So you can just share what's happening in the school with
Yeah,
the
so
community.
hi, my name is Jason Wang, and I'm the secretary of the student council, and I'm just here to update you on 2 things the student council has been doing this year so far. And the first thing I'd like to update you on is the pizza sale. So far, we have done the pizza sale for every early release Tuesday in order to raise $1,000 to rent a bouncy house for field day. Field day is where the entire school participates in physical activities on a hot June day. So far, we have made great progress and raised around $800. Yes, but there's one small change in the pizza sales this year compared to previous years. And this year, the student council is selling desserts such as whoopie pies along with a pizza.
What time is this? No.
So the second thing I would like to update you about is the student council's open pantry food drive. And so in the month of January, the student council started the open pantry food drive in order to collect and donate food to the open pantry. And so far, that's been going really great. And as I walk down the hallways, I can see the food donation bins filled to the brim with cans from the generosity of the students. And I would also like to thank the teachers and the student support, especially Mr. O'Shea, Mrs. Reed, and Dr. Mailer and Mrs. Malone.
Very nice. Very nice.
Would you entertain questions?
Yeah,
Okay. Anybody have any questions for
Sure.
Jason?
What grade are you in, Jason?
8th.
All right. You looking forward to the high school next year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Where's the open pantry?
I think it's in Concord.
Very good. Jason, I'd just like to commend you on a great presentation
Oh, thank
without
you.
notes, spoken
Yeah.
very clearly
Yeah.
and with great confidence. It was a
Oh,
pleasure to
thank you.
hear you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, Jason. That was
Thanks,
excellent.
Jason. Good job. That was great. That was the inaugural presentation.
I wouldn't want to follow that. Oh my gosh, I'd follow
Now, you
that.
can stay there or you can go back to your usual chair if you like.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank
I'm
you,
happy to have you
Jason.
stay, Jason. You can stay too.
Yeah. Wow.
Thanks for the
Okay.
door.
So,
Here he is,
Mr.
right on
DeCog.
cue. Perfect timing, Mr. DeCog.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to follow that.
No,
Jonathan
Jonathan
has.
does, but he's pretty good too. You're up, buddy.
You're up, man.
So Jonathan DeCock is here to talk about the charging station.
Yes.
You're not gonna shave.
I told him.
You're not gonna shave
I
till
told
it's
him quarter
installed, right?
past. But poor guy.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Kim.
Good night.
Okay. So yes, Jonathan DeCock here representing the Energy Task Force. Let's see. I guess by way of update, I was not here last month to talk to you guys. And the reason was that Eversource had not yet gotten us the final plans. I decided to come today to tell you that Eversource has not yet gotten us the final plans. Rather than just be blind about it. In fact, Eversource has not been in direct contact with me since before I started growing this luxurious
I was
beard.
gonna ask you that. You're not gonna shave. You're not gonna shave until the thing's installed.
So I have heard indirectly from other contractors that there is activity happening. So it's not like we fell off the face of the earth. There's stuff happening, but we don't have anything for you guys to vote on yet. That said, what I'm worried about is our Green Communities grant expires on May 31st. If we wait for your March meeting, that gives us 2.5 months to go from approval to complete fully functional installation.
Yeah.
So, if I get something from Eversource, I would like to ask for the favor of, may I request a special meeting of the school committee? I mean, you guys have been really supportive in this the whole way, so.
Well, what you're doing is awesome, so, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it can't be next week because the school's closed.
Yeah, no, given where things are,
I
what are
think
the
the
chances of
second
next
posted.
week?
So what's your
Oh, yeah.
kind
What's that?
what's your sort of drop dead date if you don't get approval by a certain date? What happens?
Well, I think actually we could probably run till like the end of March, and I suspect that they could get the whole thing done in a month and a half.
Are they aware
but
of this deadline?
They are. It was in our original application.
Do you have a contact there that you're following up with?
Yes.
Is that person responsive?
No.
Do you know who they work for?
Yes, Eversource. In fact, I know their boss and their boss's boss, and they're all on the same emails, and I still don't get a response.
Wow.
So.
And they don't give a reason why the delay?
No. But I'm hopeful that things will come together in the next, say, 3 weeks.
Okay, all right, great.
But
Look forward to that.
yeah, just from what I'm hearing from other people, but since that's all under negotiations.
The only wrinkle for us is that we have to have a public notification of how many, is it 7 days?
No,
2 days.
2 days.
So,
We'll do it as soon as you let us know.
yeah.
Okay, so I will
Can I
let
have a
Christine
morning meeting
know.
with 3 people?
Yeah,
I will let Christine know, and you guys can, when I let Christine know, I will also give her a write-up, and you guys can decide whether you want to do it at the regular meeting, or if you want to do it
No,
at.
we won't delay. When's the next meeting? Yeah, we'll accommodate.
Second week of March, I believe.
So if you're fortunate, then we'll certainly.
March 11th.
Yeah, so it's 4 weeks from today.
Yeah, okay, very good.
Thank you very much for everything you're
Thanks
doing.
for
They're not
coming.
making it easy.
Yeah,
We know that.
We missed you last month.
Yeah,
We did.
sorry.
We did.
So,
okay,
All right. Excellent.
great.
All right. Love these bullet meetings, huh?
Yep, you're on a
You
roll.
have a record.
I know, I'm gonna be last month. So Jim is gonna go, show us some stuff about the Metco program.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't think I needed to connect you to.
No.
I just wanted to.
Yep. Thought we had a Metco thing in here, didn't we? Oh. There's only one page? Look at Jim trying to save some money.
What was that?
Nothing. Go ahead, you're on.
He's saving money. We're happy.
This is my pattern.
I think it's succinct.
Want me to dim the lights?
No, I think we're okay.
Okay.
I'm just gonna sit here.
Oh, all right, that's great.
So this evening, we're just gonna share a little information, have a conversation regarding the Metco program. Now, as everyone's aware, we've been engaged in doing some visioning work with the extended community in Carlisle. And we've had conversations, we've been involved with the master planning, which is taking place in the town. In those conversations, the question of METCO has come up, and how does METCO relate to visioning? And in our visioning work, the idea of looking for a more diverse and inclusive community has come up as an ideal that people want to work towards in that 5-year projection. So it makes sense that we take a few minutes, talk about the METCO program so that we can all have a shared understanding of what it is when we use the term, and if it's something that we here in Carlisle want to move towards being part of at the pre-K through 8 level. As you know, our high school students who go to Concord Carlisle are part of the METCO program because CCHS is a METCO school. So.
As are their elementary and middle school.
In Concord, yeah, in Concord, the elementary.
They bring kids from
Yep.
Boston to
Yes.
K grade?
Yep.
It's 6th grade, yes. So little background, METCO, it comes from the name of the program, Metropolitan Council for Educational Opportunities. So METCO, it's a voluntary program designed to expand educational opportunities, increase diversity, and reduce racial isolation. It's been around since 1966. It started off with originally 7 communities. Now it's up to 38 school districts. As you can see, I put down some of the outliers. So METCO is also in Springfield, so there's the Springfield community and 4 districts around Springfield, but around the Boston community, it goes as far north as Swampscott, out kind of northwest, Bedford, Concord, Carlisle, down in the southwest, Sherburne, and then Situate. So it's a pretty expansive community there. And the idea is they have students who are interested in coming out into these communities for their education, and then the city works collaboratively with the communities to get those students out.
Jim, the city is only Boston though?
The city is Boston, yes.
Right, so there's not in Springfield.
And even within Boston, it's segments of Boston.
Right, but what I mean to say is there's not a Worcester one.
No, there's not. So it's
There's
Boston and
only-
Springfield.
And is there
Those are the
any,
two.
to your understanding, has there been any discussion at the MGL or wherever, Desi,
It's a good idea.
of other?
I am not
urban
aware of
centers?
any other, looking at like Lowell,
Yeah,
doing something
like
Lowell.
Lowell,
I have
right.
not heard or seen any of that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of places that could be sending cities, it
Yeah.
seems like. And, you're getting far afield with these poor kids. That's why I wonder about K through 8 kids. It's a long bus ride.
Down when we get to the end, there's a few of the frequently asked questions, and one of the questions is how long is a day for
Yeah.
one of these students?
Swamp school.
And it could be from, getting on the bus at 5:30 in the morning and getting home at, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. If someone comes out to its community and they're on one of the sports teams,
Yeah.
you leave
Long
early, you get
day
home
for-
late, it's
Long day for a 12-year-old.
So benefits. Obviously, it creates an environment that's beneficial to the students in the communities and the students that are coming out from Boston. Really, it just helps to prepare students to be part of a very diverse world and to be more of a global citizen. And it's also, the districts that I spoke with, it's not just about the academic programs either, right? It's academic and it's social. So in order to really integrate students, you have to have supports in place that support both the school part, but the after-school pieces. And the after-school supports for the families, and making sure that families have access to the school resources that are located miles and hours away. So that's one of the challenges that districts face.
And is it before you jump to the next
Yeah.
one, is it your understanding that the participating districts do a good job at that part?
I would say it's an it's been going on now for some districts have been involved for 7
Lori, you would
years.
know the best.
Yeah, I would say that they continue to evolve in meeting the ever-changing needs of the students from both communities. Right, that's one of the challenges. So even though they've been at CCHS, they've had it for decades. I was at a program, I think 2 years ago, where it was about talking with the students who are coming from the city, seeing what challenges they face and how can the district continue to evolve in meeting those needs. And if that means and I think it was a couple of years ago, they had a late bus, but then they created a later bus to make sure the students could get back to the homes, even if they were at social events, not just sporting events. So just continually assessing the student experience and putting in place the supports necessary to make sure that it's
So that's
rich
from the
and
school side,
positive.
and you heard from the students themselves, the MECO students? and-
At that session,
Yeah.
you did hear from student experiences.
And was it positive?
So I would say that, now I'm speaking in generalities, I would say that the students' experiences were overall positive, but they had, part of the reason there was a meeting was that there were enough things, challenges that needed to be addressed,
Right.
that they were having more of a
You were
forum
just
to
invited
address
to
that.
that, or you came out of interest?
I was invited and I came out of interest because it was interesting.
And I mean, data, I guess data would be useful in terms of retention. In other words, if a ninth grader tries it, does she go back?
So some of the data,
That would tell you whether
some of the
they find it
anecdotal
worth
data
the
was
try.
that when students have more success, the longer they're in the METCO program.
Yeah,
So if the students come in sooner,
yeah.
there's
Coming
more.
younger.
Come into the district,
Yeah.
so that for whatever reason, students who come in later,
Yes.
ninth,
Yeah.
sixth or
They
ninth
don't
grade,
identify as much with.
there are more gaps. It might be described as gaps in their experience.
Okay, because probably they're not as involved socially with.
The gaps, I think I'm referring to more educational gaps.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. They find it more too challenging.
I'm not saying they find it too challenging, I think the gaps are,
I guess I
the
was
gaps
looking
of those
at,
students are large.
I was
are
looking at a
simply
simpler
large.
metric, which was
Yeah.
simply, given that it's 2 hours at least of extra time a day, you vote with your feet, right? Do the students find enough good things in it that year-over-year retention within the cohort or whatever it is,
Oh, I think, yes,
That's the
students who are
thing.
in the program persist in the program.
they do.
They do persist,
Okay, that was-
and there's waiting list, like there's waiting lists in all these communities to be part of the
So-
program.
And Matt, you're a Bedford guy, right? Were you Bedford?
Yeah, I was in Bedford for this and for that. Lexington, they both for MECO districts.
And what it
I
was-
would speak very highly to it. It's a very successful program. It's also multi-generational. You've
Yeah.
had children go through it in the 60s and 70s, 80s, and then their
The
children.
kids.
Oh, cool.
I bet you if you even look hard enough, you might even have 3 generations going
Well,
through
I mean,
2020.
That stands to reason, because then parents would promote it, that is a huge.
Yeah, there's a waiting list for families to
Yeah.
join.
Did you have it in middle school as well, or just?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
in both Lexington and Bedford, yep.
Is there any information about the students in the participating schools, the benefit that they get from the METCO program?
So
I'm speaking as a person who was in a school that had METCO in Brookline and experienced a lot of the benefits, but nobody ever took a survey that I
Yeah,
recall.
that's true. Yeah.
So I direct you to the superintendent of Bedford, John Sells. He did a video kind of interview documentary of METCO experiences, of the children from the METCO, of their experiences, just to, John is somebody definitely we should reach out to. We can even ask to see some of the videos too.
Great,
If
thank you.
there's a waiting list, then it must, community-wide, it must have an overwhelming positive.
I would think, I'm sure it's overall positive. I'm just thinking about the experience from the students. I mean, I think it's very telling what Matt said, if your parents had a good, all data of all kinds of sociological data shows, even studies of like giving pre-K to kids, their kids benefit. I mean, there's so much to helping people value education, and then they pass that on to the next generation.
Yeah.
So that part I understand. But the simple metric of does a kid, just find it's just either too hard or it doesn't fit in or whatever, says, I don't want that extra bus ride, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
That would be an indicator, but it seems like maybe.
I think students persist, so
Yeah,
I
that's
think
good.
that's,
I mean, that's really
that's
good.
positive. I think there is important data to be gathered from cohort size, right?
Yeah.
In that whole dynamic within the school.
Right.
And I thought you were also alluding to the fact, what is the positive impact it has on the resident students too, right?
That's what I'm-
Even
Well,
yeah.
that's Shannon's.
Anecdotally,
Yeah.
I'm not exaggerating, 3 times this year I've had and I haven't had more than 4 conversations about the METCO program, but 3 times I've spoken with Carlisle parents who explained, who talked about the positive impact it's had on their child. And at one of the parent visiting sessions,
Because their parents are high school kids.
because their parents are high school kids and their children, and their friends, their friend group has expanded such, and now
Yeah, that's good.
that they have these interactions, and it's very positive. Did you want to say something, Woody?
So, you know, my 2 older kids who went through Wellesley High School, Wellesley has a METCO program. And, you know, my oldest an athlete, so there's always football games and lacrosse games, and a lot of the kids, the METCO kids would sleep over, just to make it easier for them to get back and forth. And we all the teen mothers, we all did that and whatnot, but I cannot tell you the benefits, both for my son to be able to just have a deeper understanding about the varied lifestyles that everybody has, as well as the students that stayed at my house, you know, they talked about METCO as a program that saved their life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good, okay.
So then we get into finances. So the program is funded through grants from the state, and that funding is determined annually. So every year, the state makes a determination how much they're going to fund the program. Funding comes in a couple of different sources. So one, there's a per pupil expenditure, which seemed, I think was 4,000, the data I was looking at was 4,000 some odd numbers. But you also get funding for some transportation funding. And then additionally, depending on the profile of the students, it could increase your Chapter 70 funding.
Oh.
So depending on the students, so there's more funding.
Just because you have more kids in your system, or a separate, like?
Because you have more children in, depending on the profile of the students that come in, the need might be greater. That may have the knock-on effect of increasing your Chapter 70.
So the 4,000 is a standard, like the choice thing?
Yes,
It's a
yes.
standard. And the transportation is provided, or they help with it?
They help, there's another payment that's a per pupil
I
transportation.
know there's a regular school bus, or buses that go.
The district, the host
Here.
district is responsible for the transportation.
So for example, if we sampled with 6 kids, I don't know, we'd have one of those little bus guys.
We would provide
We would provide it.
We would provide a bus and pick it up.
Wow.
Yeah. So in conversations with a couple of districts, the estimates from the funding they receive from the state
Yeah.
and the overall cost of the programming,
Yeah.
it covers about 75% of the cost. So there is a commitment on the host district financially. Couple of frequently asked questions, and then we can talk a little. Is METCO the same as Choice? No, METCO and Choice are 2 completely different programs. One is really about, you know, creating an environment of diversity and shared experiences, and the other is about allowing students to come into our district. There residency requirements for METCO. The residency requirements are that students have to be residents of Boston area or Springfield if you're participating from those places. Is METCO for students from low-income households? That is, no, it's not. So sometimes there's this understanding that there's a belief that it is not. It is really, because of the diversity component, it's really designed for students of African, Asian, or Hispanic descent. So it is looking to balance that.
They actually favor.
Those are prioritized, yes. So even that comes out even in the communities as I look at, because we talk about Boston, but really the parts of Boston the students come from are predominantly like Dorchester or Roxbury.
But they're actually prioritizing by ethnicity.
Yes.
Is that constitutional? You want to do that?
I think the way the program is designed, that's the way it is.
Interesting, they don't do it economics. I would think
I know, I
economics
would have
would
thought it was
be a more
economics too.
important indicator. But,
Remember, it's what the goal of the program is. If we go back to the goal, it's not about the economic diversity.
Okay, all right.
It's just an interesting point, right? You think it might be one thing, but it's not.
Yep.
Who is in charge of transportation for students? It would be the host district. Are there criteria for accepting students into METCO? Like, is there a grade point average requirement or something along those lines? There are no requirements. So if you open it up, there's an application pool, the students will apply.
But it's not randomized, right? Choice is randomized, right?
No, it's a waiting list, so it's really the waiting list priority.
Who's next?
It's who's next in line.
Oh, like by time of,
By
like
time.
date entry standard.
Yes.
So it's not competitive, it's not a competitive process.
No, but it's not like we can compare your profile to Christine's
It's
profile,
not a
other than
no interview,
those
nothing like
sentences
that.
right now. What happens to students on IEPs? If the district provides educational services to students, like if it's a service you provide to students, then you would provide it to all students. And that's your responsibility to provide that service. If it's not a service you provide to students, then it wouldn't be. So we're back to like an out-of-district
So out of
placement.
district, you return the student to.
It
You'd
wouldn't
be out
be
of
your,
their
it
district,
wouldn't be
not
your
our district.
responsibility, it would be Boston's responsibility after that. And then that was the other question, how long is the day for a Medco student? It could be a significant length of time. But as we said, families are very interested, and there's a waiting list. Families know the advantages that this can create for them if they're a Boston family. And families in these other communities know the benefits that their children derive in their community. So it's a very, there's a lot of positivity around the METCO program and a lot of support, and people think very highly of it.
How long is the commute usually for those students coming? They mostly come from Boston, right? This is where we
Yes.
get most of the students. So how long is their commute every day?
That's a good question. I don't know like the exact length of time, like if someone were to go from
Yeah, it's about an hour.
Dorchester
on a
to
good day, yeah.
CCHS.
Okay, Situate is
But it's a
far.
reverse
I mean,
commute.
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
Situate's 31 miles. It's
Yeah.
even
Or
further than
Swampscott.
us.
There's no easy way to get to Swampscott.
Yeah.
One thing I just want to add when I was in Bedford, because they were working on we were providing breakfast for students
Oh.
because they wake up very early and they arrive early to school as well, so we would provide those.
So I grew up going to Bedford schools, and it was back when it was probably a newer program, but I feel like parents hosted. There were parents that said, I'll be a host family. And so
Yeah, maybe.
it was high school kids.
Yeah.
They didn't have to go back and forth at night. During the week, they could stay at the local home.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, we had a Medco student who just moved in with a family forever.
Yeah,
He just became part of the town.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's harder with younger kids.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, but this was
Yeah.
just.
It would be nice if it was like lower lines. I mean,
So the drive wasn't so.
I think it's it sounds like a great program. I'm just worried about these poor kids.
Start time.
Can we take a question from Mr. DeCoe?
You're the chair.
I certainly don't stand
Whatever you-
against it. You may.
Oh, if it's not a public hearing, I thought.
You have to say your name and your street first.
Okay. Jonathan DeCock, 130 Oak Mill Road.
Oh, not you, yeah.
I just wanted to comment that we sent my son to Finn, and Finn actually runs a similar program. It's not exactly METCO, I don't know exactly what they call it, but they do bus children out from Boston. And we found it was really excellent. Some of my son's best friends actually live in Boston, right? Now, mind you, when he goes down there to play with them, that's a really long commute for us, but it's good. And so some of the things you're worrying about, like the commute, it's my understanding that the kids actually do like their homework and reading and whatnot on the bus on the way in and out. So it's not like completely wasted time, they're actually able to do stuff there. So in general, I think it's, any kind of program to increase diversity. That's one of the reasons one of the concerns we had going to Fenn was that it would be less diverse.
Yeah.
But it turns out because they run this program, we not only got ethnic and racial diversity, we also ended up with income diversity, which was a very positive.
What grade is he in?
He's currently in 8th, going into 9th next year.
Yeah, I mean, both Evan and I have children who take long commutes. They
Yeah.
don't seem any worse for the winter.
Yeah, it's,
Well, and it is the family's decision, I think they
Yeah.
know they choose this advantage or feel it's an advantage,
Right.
and so they sign up for the whole
Well,
thing.
kids, I mean, it's true, like what Jonathan said. Well, he didn't say this part, but in the era of devices,
Yeah,
no ride is too long.
Right.
Because when they get home, the device goes away.
yeah, yeah.
So one of the things some of the schools identified though was because of the length of that ride for students
Yeah.
on the bus, and because the bus driver is focused on driving the bus, and they often have
A monitor.
monitors on the bus.
So that's another
Just a
cost.
second adult on the bus, because
That's another
it's a
cost.
lot of time, yeah.
And then that monitor has to get home, yeah.
And this is provided through case transportation, the transportation or?
No, we provide.
No, this would be to,
But-
each
Carlisle
district,
Public
each
School.
district provided the transportation.
And we would, if we were ever part of that program, we would use case?
No, so that's a whole nother road.
Yeah.
The town has already walked away from that proposition at the high school level. I would say, no, we would look for
Bus
a
contract.
bus
Right.
company, a
Bus
bus contract to see.
Susan
if
and
we
I
can
know
do
that turf very
Yeah.
well.
Okay.
So, I mean, but,
Because the cost sometimes of the transportation is higher than the cost of education.
well, but I presume that because they're from various neighborhoods in Boston, I presume one vehicle would.
So, and that's
We would
why
pilot.
the community, like, there's a particular region that they try to get to, so they may make one or two stops in that, but they can't drive all over the city.
And we can't be sending 6 buses.
Right, so parents really, there's central locations that
Right.
parents are responsible to get the children to in the city for the pickup.
Right, I mean, we have to consider at least 30, no, for Boston, probably $40,000 or $50,000 of transportation if we get everybody in one vehicle, right?
And you said something
Yeah,
about 2
One thing we were
buses?
talking about is, given the different start times for elementary and middle
Yeah.
school, I mean, that's a variable that comes into play with buses, because then you could conceivably have, kindergartners or first graders here if they rode the same bus with middle school students.
So what do you do with them, yeah?
Yeah. So
Well, I
then-
mean, but in the Lexington and Bedford and in Concord, I guess they take elementary school kids as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm trying to, I think Concord was 6th grade, they may have elementary, I was thinking it was 6th grade.
Yeah, I mean, from,
Yeah, I know.
Do they
I
have
think they
elementary?
have elementary, because they had that
Yeah,
whole
too.
conversation about
Yeah.
whether to.
Which school
Whether
they
they
go
should
to.
all be in
whether
one
to-
school
to-
or not.
To split up into different schools, because there wasn't enough.
But I thought that so part of that
It
conversation
was also the middle school.
was the middle school piece where all the students went to one middle school.
right.
Oh, the
And that was just awkward, having one that had the program and one that didn't have the program. But now that they've reformatted,
It doesn't matter. yeah.
that's no longer an issue.
Yeah,
But
from
I'm
the-
not
I
sure.
thought that they. I thought
You might be
they
right,
talked
you're
about-
probably
I thought
They
talked
did.
about- yeah.
They definitely do.
Well, I mean, start time thing is a consideration, because that makes the day even longer if you still run one bus and everybody's on the longest end, both ends. But I guess from the purely from the standpoint of filling out our head count in a smoother way, middle school makes the most sense. 'Cause
Yeah.
we could fill that. We're struggling to maintain that, minimum level that allows for the 4 sections.
Well, and at least to start, I think we need to
And
start where
let's-
we're,
Yeah.
What's,
Yeah.
what is the host schools, like, what's your agency and can you say, we're opening this up to 6th graders and
Yes.
so what's, and
The point of, so you can determine the point of entry
you can. you
when
know,
students come. And some districts have it just in high school, some districts start at middle school, and some districts start in the elementary school. So
So
it would be
from-
the host district could make that
And
determination.
you determine how many slots you have available. and you-
Yeah.
And you can change year by year how many slots you have. I mean, I assume that
It's-
once a kid is, not once a kid is in, but I'm saying for the next, so let's say you started at 5th grade, and you say this year we have 6 slots in 5th grade.
I would think.
Next year, do you have to offer 6 slots?
So I would think working with the organization, right, you would determine what an appropriate cohort size is, right? So, and once you have an appropriate cohort size, then that's probably the cohort size that you want to go with as a minimum. So you may have some flexibility as becoming larger, but
I think, but-
you wouldn't fluctuate in like, we only have 6 slots, that may throw off the whole dynamic.
But Sarah's asking a different question. Let's say we decide that to her example, there's 6 slots in the 5th grade, and we do that, and we pilot 1 year out, and then the following year, we say, okay, those guys are moving on to 6. And now we have 4 slots. Can we do that? We ought to be able to do that.
No, but that's what I'm saying, that, operating on that premise is based on how many slots, isn't taking into consideration the entire experience that all of these students are gonna have in this space, right?
So you're saying, you do some kind of other study that says 6 is a minimum cohort that would be,
Beneficial for
Beneficial
students
to
to feel
everybody.
as part of the community.
So don't do
So
the
we're not
field.
really rounding out the class numbers, we are creating a differentiated group of kids,
Correct.
right? I mean,
But-
because it's
Yeah.
two different objectives.
Yes.
But if you decide that the right size is 6 kids, and the next year you have 8 slots, can we take 8?
So I haven't decided what the right
No, I know,
size is,
I know,
because
I realize
that's a
that.
significant question, but that is a significant question,
Yeah.
because that's about the child's experience and whether it's getting like the whole program is having the benefit.
right, so you're saying, okay, so you're saying just more generically.
So
you
we
could
may say that for it to be successful, there has to be a cohort of 12 students, let's say
Right.
that. So now we bring 12 students in here,
All the same grade.
all in the same grade, right? So that's the cohort we're starting with. Then if the next year we said, well, we really could probably take 14 students, I don't think that would be problematic.
Okay.
Oh, we only have
Well,
8
that-
slots
right.
this year, that would be problematic.
Well, if it's under your minimum, it would be problematic. But what the general question of whether you can vary the cohort year over year is yes.
Yes.
So if we decided this scholastic year to trial the program, we're not talking about next fall, we're talking about 2
Oh.
falls from now, or 3 falls from now?
I would, yeah, so this is an initial conversation. If this was something, we'd have to get in touch with the organization and see
But
How
how
to
long is
prepare
it?
ourselves.
how we prepare, they vet us if we are prepared well enough to
Yeah.
engage in
How
this
many years
process.
is that process? Do you have any idea?
I would say it's at least 2.
Yeah.
What happens with siblings? You know, if a family
Right.
has a child in 6th grade enter,
Yeah.
And they have-
the priority.
do they get
Yeah,
priority?
they are.
They go to
And-
the top,
Hmm?
they go to the top of the line.
Yeah, but you say, okay, we have a glut in grade 4 coming up, we're not gonna have any slots, but they have a grade 4.
So, but here's the situation, once you become part of the program, there's some expectations
Yeah,
of the
you can't
program.
only give
And
your
that is like,
turn
if we
to
have
valve
12
out.
slots this year, we have 12 slots next year, that is,
At a minimum.
because
I mean, right.
you're not just
Because
creating a
depending
grade
on
level
us.
cohort, you're creating a school-wide cohort.
Right, and that's the vulnerability, once again, we bump up against the diseconomies of scale at Carlisle
Right.
School. So we may say, well, great, we only have like 70 kids in X grade, and 10 would be great, we'll have 80, that's
But
perfect.
you're also guaranteeing that if you take 12, that the high school has to accept those.
Well, that's a whole nother thing. I
Yeah,
guess.
we'd have to work we'd have to work those nuances out with the
Yeah.
high school, but understanding that we are 3 districts,
Yeah,
we do understand that Concord has an agreement with CCHS.
yeah.
So we could have a similar.
Do we have, I don't think, do we have a understanding with
No.
CCHS?
No, what he's saying is CPS,
Concord already has one. The
Concord
Concord district
Concord
has one
K
with
through
Concord
8.
Carlisle.
it's
All these-
understood.
Yeah, this would all have to be worked out. Like,
So they would have to absorb whatever we have.
Well, then
Right.
we
we would have
ask
to
them.
work it out, yeah, we would need to work
They
it
don't
out.
have to do anything, but we
Well,
would want
that'd be
them.
kind of crappy to have them come.
Right,
It would
right.
be crappy.
Can I just
That's-
ask a quick question about special education? Since it's a blind acceptance, if a student is then brought in and after some amount of time, their needs are too great for the district, I'm not sure I understand. Do they just leave the school, or is there an arrangement where there's a shared financial support?
So as it was described to me, if internally, we have
The
we
capability.
have the supports in place. So if
Yeah.
you need to get speech, we provide
Right,
speech.
right.
If you need to receive special instruction from a special educator, we provide that. If you need a sub-separate program and we don't have one for our students,
Mhm.
then you would need to go elsewhere, and then it would be our responsibility. But if we had a
Are you
sub-separate,
sure it wouldn't be? I thought.
yes, that's the way it was,
Would be Boston's response,
Right.
that's the way I understand it right now.
I just wondered, just because I
Yeah.
was looking up some newer information, and I just concerned when I saw it would be a cooperation between the state, Boston, and the receiving district. So it's just.
That is for all of the kind of special ed services that are not considered what we call high. So in other words, all integrated, when we start to get to the high level of need, where they require to be pulled out into a sub-separate setting,
Right.
or needs a one-to-one, then that's a high level of need, and then that gets bumped back to the district. That's not
The
something.
cost or the student?
So this,
Okay.
we need to do this right, because from my perspective, I don't mean to disagree, but I would say if we provide one-to-ones for other students in our district, then we would provide a one-to-one as needed for the students coming from the city. But if we get to a place where there was the student coming from Boston needed a program that we did not offer here
Right.
to our own students, and in that scenario, they would need to go somewhere. But if we had a program here that we did offer to our students, even if it
It's
wasn't,
an out-of-district industry.
even if it was an extra expense to us, we would still provide.
So
it to
Lori,
us.
to your
Does that make sense?
understanding, say the out-of-district case, would Carlisle own the IEP of that student, or would transfer it back to Boston?
If the student got placed out of
Yeah.
district, Boston owns the IEP, we don't own the IEP.
So you would just, I mean, they come
They're
in
not a
and.
METCO student anymore.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
true.
They're out of
That's
it.
basically what happens, they're not a METCO student.
Oh, yeah, because they have to go to a different school.
Yeah.
Right.
So back to the, I didn't quite finish my point, is that the risk of being a small district, it is a big commitment, and we do run the risk, because it's many years out, and you are taking those children for multiple years. And to your point, some analysis, I don't know how you do it, but some analysis about what a minimum cohort is. So, you know, there's a real scenario where X years away, you suddenly have a big class size and you've got those extra children and you're under-resourced, you know, I mean, that's a real thing. So.
Yeah.
I guess what we're facing though is in our larger discussion, we're really doing a side-by-side comparison between choice and METCO in a way. And we've stated as kind of one of our values as a school system, I hear over and over again that we value diversity and we're trying to have more of that. Choice has been proposed as a diversity play and METCO's being proposed that way. As it turns out, maybe choice isn't very effective in terms of getting us diversity, and it also seems to be not that effective in terms of a revenue, or it may be.
No,
it may-
neither are revenue
yeah.
positive.
But,
so
and I
set
know
that
there was
aside.
a little bit of fancy math that possibly if you did it just the right way, that,
That's-
Yeah.
no?
That's drug-induced stupid. I think that's just, there's no point.
To drug-induced stupor, that it would be
Right. I mean,
financially
advantageous. So
advantageous.
really,
Or
I
school
mean,
choice.
Let me,
Yeah.
but my point is
I may have
that
been the one
while
inducing the
we're-
drug-induced stupor.
while we're considering these things,
yeah.
you know, I'm thinking of a grid, and, you know, there's this side-by-side comparison, and it's, are they successful in terms of diversity? Are they successful in terms of a revenue model for us?
Right.
And those are really the only two criteria I really hear. And I'm hearing like a double negative checkbox for choice, and I'm hearing a positive one for METCO and diversity, and actually a more positive financially than choice.
I wouldn't, yeah, I'm with you. So in the grid, I
Yep.
would say that there are, to my view, they both cost money. And one could argue METCO might cost more money because you're making a bigger commitment, so that,
Okay.
right? And clearly it's better from diversity, because obviously it's focused on diversity. So
Yep.
there's no question. If
Okay.
the goal is diversity, it's superior. And my pushback then to the visioning is, how much are you willing to pay for such diversity? This is a rich school district's choice. We will actually pay to be diverse, right?
Yeah.
That's the question. I also think if we're gonna go down that path, and I'm not against it, but I want us to be clear on it, that's why I said, is a third option, which is more complicated, but actually serves the Commonwealth better, which is we got lots of need right around us. What can we do? Well, how can we lead? And we're not under any time pressure. This is a multi-year process no matter what. To reach out to the city of Lowell. Say, hey, we're here.
Begin the same similar program.
Yeah, let's start one. I mean,
Yeah.
the model exists. The kids are right there. Why send buses all over the, you know, those Boston
Well,
kids,
there are
there's
kids right
38
now.
other districts they can go visit. I honestly, I
kids
think,
The
if we
kids
want
in
real
Lowell have a
leadership.
chance of having social
You sound like
interactions
Josh.
that go on.
Yeah, but,
Well,
good.
currently
It's
you
good.
get financial assistance from
You
the
know,
state for METCO.
it's
we
just-
might-
saying if you
but we
create
work-
your
they're
own.
not paying that much. I'm telling you right now, we would pay for, we're paying for this benefit.
Yeah, we're gonna pay
I just
for it.
think we gotta think bigger.
How much
This
do they
program for
pay
us school, I
us?
just wanna say, for a small school like us,
$4,000.
this is fraught with
And do they pay?
economic impact that we don't understand. I'm just telling you right
I
now.
think that's an
Funding
excellent
comes about
point.
75% of the overall.
economic.
Nah, it's no way 75, it's no way 71%.
Well, because then you
It's
get,
$4,000 on a $20,000 tuition.
I'm
And
not
it's
trying,
some
I'm
pittance
just
against
giving
a
you the,
Well,
what I was
$50,000
told.
bus
I
bill.
was gonna say, the
And
bus
it's
bill.
no sped costs. I'm telling you, it's not at all, I'm just not,
All right, I'm just sharing what I asked the question, and that was the response I got. And I thought they were being as honest as possible. They sent me their grant
they may be
sheets.
honest,
They
I
sent
just
me-
think they know their
Sometimes it's
numbers.
hard to get David to tell us his point of view. Come on, David.
All right, so what we can do, like, I can do some exploration.
Yeah.
Like, because I have some spreadsheets about grant money,
Yeah.
I have some presentations from METCO programs about the impact,
Yeah.
but I try to keep it simple, right? I
Yeah.
don't want to
No, we should
overwhelm.
talk to, maybe a rep should come, I mean, it's very interesting.
But I'm not, I'll reach out to the state and see if they've ever considered other cities, in which case I might also reach out to whoever they might put us in touch with
Yeah.
over there.
Was Springfield always part of the METCO program, or did that get added, did it just
I'm
start in
believing it
Boston?
wasn't always, based on the
Yeah,
historic
I
of
don't
7
think-
districts.
So at some
they
point,
added that on,
there is
so,
a
yeah.
precedent for bringing in,
Yeah,
I
right.
would think.
Yeah, I mean, there's
I
Worcester.
think one of, so,
There's a lot of,
There's
there's a lot of
Lawrence.
opportunity in this state
I
overall
mean,
Yeah.
to expand this to more.
Well, and
So
that's
now
a
like-
needs, you know, that's
now
a
the
needs, isn't it
speculation.
economic needs region or something?
The thing is that even if we were to successfully follow the lead of Springfield
Yeah.
and come up with a Lowell or a Lawrence, from your persuasive argument about the lack of financial viability, it doesn't solve that problem.
No, it doesn't.
No,
But it
but
may
it-
be something we're willing to, I mean, that's where I really push back on visioning and the master planning. I mean, to
Just
walk the
what's the
walk will cost money, is what I'm
Yes,
saying.
but what's the
Is that-
benefit of getting kids from Lowell instead of getting from Boston?
Because the student experience would definitely be better.
For the students in Lowell, because
Yeah,
they
yeah,
have a shorter
yeah.
ride.
Well, for everybody, because it's easier to
Yeah,
have
make
a
play
play
dates.
date with someone who lives in Lowell than.
And we
it is
should
to-
be a good neighbor to our,
Yeah.
you know.
I love
We
it.
don't really owe Boston anything, right? But regionally,
I'm not sure the equation is designed that way.
regionally,
So that wasn't well.
I don't know, I'll withdraw.
I'm, no,
I'll
I'm
withdraw.
not.
No, but I think I kind
You
of
didn't
understand
write
what you were
that down.
saying.
We have and I don't say an obligation, but, you know, this whole, I mean,
Different
I have to
opportunity.
say, my ethos is formed by many years battling 30B, right, the affordable housing. An exact same argument. This silly regulation that says you inside of Carlisle with its 2-acre zoning have to have X amount of affordable houses. So, you know, cops and teachers can live in town. I'm like, no, why don't we have give Lowell some money so they can build better housing for the people who need, that would make so much more sense. So to me, it's just kind of myopic, and it's a personal view, but you know, about saying, okay, we got that Sneed in Boston, we have this whole corridor that's been recognized, I think, as an economic development zone or something, right?
Yep.
Lowell offers all kinds of incentives for companies to move there, Lawrence same, I mean, so, I don't know, it just seems
I
like
think
that.
it's an excellent idea.
It's something we can explore. I think
Yeah.
there's a couple other challenges. One is METCO, the program has a lot of resources and expertise, and maybe we can access that. Because usually districts also have METCO coordinators they bring in
Yeah.
to facilitate
That
that.
might be excited by.
The other
I mean,
piece
an economic
is-
development person might be excited.
Yeah, and the other piece is I think, when we get into the Lowells or the Lawrences, I think one of the benefits, the Bostons and the Springfield, now I'm speculating, is that those communities have surrounding communities that are more affluent, right?
Yeah.
And so therefore, there's more communities that can support that around them.
Right.
And I'm just not sure how many communities around Lowell and Lawrence,
Westford.
yeah, may be willing
Yeah.
to
Excellent.
engage in that.
Acton is fine. Actually, I would argue the other way. I think, Metro West is one of the
Yeah.
most affluent pockets of.
No, but I'm saying inside of that beltway that we've created with the Swampscott, Bedford, Concord, inside that, there's 38 communities that are part of the Boston one.
But what's the
Yeah.
point then? What are you saying?
Now, I'm just thinking, if we go around Lawrence,
How
are
many
there
do
as
that?
many, or Lowell, are there as many
You don't need
communities
as
with
many.
the
Around
resources?
Springfield,
Or
there
much
are
smaller
only 4,
city.
Yeah.
right? Didn't you say there are 4 in the Springfield one?
Yeah,
But,
right.
I mean, that's not so many.
I'm just speculating at some of the challenges.
No, but
All right.
maybe you bring along some of these
Just
towns
call the
that-
governor.
are not doing METCO that
Might be interesting also.
Could
Okay.
be a leader, Jim.
So I'll research with the state and I'll research with the city.
All right.
And I'll look into what a
Your
plan would be for
big
years, like how many years it would take if we were interested in METCO. And then everything else would be speculation if we we're gonna create our own. I don't know how many years we're looking, but give me something to talk about. All right, I'll report back at the
Excellent.
April meeting.
I mean, I would say one closing comment too. I mean, we'll have hopefully many more discussions about this, but, you know, if we did decide to pilot something with a low, we might not need to go full board. It could be between the two school districts, just,
Yep,
you know, send some kids. We'll
yeah,
take a few kids, you know. don't know
I
if
love
it's
it.
easy.
I think it's
Bypassing choice in a way,
excellent.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Well, but
well, choice, the problem,
choices,
right,
you're gonna
is
just
what
get a bunch
Shannon
of,
said.
yeah.
Right, but.
Hmm?
Yeah, the Western
It's
kids.
working in a choice school,
Yeah.
it's a choice district.
Yeah, okay, all right.
All right, that's excellent. Thank you
Interesting.
very much. Let me start. Susan, do you want to do with the budget?
Sure. I've presented you with both versions of the budget
Thank you.
update. The typical that we've done standard for years, and the newer version that gives us the 2 quarters that we've gone through, and then a year-to-date. Year-to-date, we've spent 48% of our budget. The difference in both now is that we, as suggested by Finance Committee, we've broken the placeholders for special ed out of districts out in a separate line item. So you'll see on my typical, there's a contingency line under special ed tuition. And that's just taking those 2 placeholders and putting them in a separate line till we see how the year fares, you know, as we go on.
So this tuition 289 includes this placeholder in the second chart?
No, the 289.
Oh, contingency, I see, never mind, I got it.
Now, the reason in my typical, it's in the negative 123, we're going to be doing, and Priscilla already has it, the journal entry moving circuit breaker back into the out-of-district tuition line. So, within the next week or 2, she'll be.
So you're actually running a little surplus if you factor that in?
Correct. Other than that, we're still waiting for some insurance refunds, and we have some extra costs due to the water issue that we've
Testing,
dealt
yeah.
with. But the town covered the elevator repair, and they had their fund for that. We had given some money back
Right,
way
way
back.
back.
So Susan, on that balance then, when circuit breaker is repopulated, your balance will actually be, will be almost 200,000, right?
It will, she's gonna put 143 back in.
Right, but I'm saying your balance presently with the negative 124, 23 is 57,000.
Yeah.
You're gonna increase that by 143,000, right? So you'll be at
Right.
190-something thousand
Right.
surplus.
Thanks for doing both.
It's, you know, it's a good lesson.
Mhm.
It's a good lesson.
Well, I think it's important that,
Let that be a lesson.
Yeah, they show
think
different things.
yeah, and I think it's good that we're supporting the request of the fund.
Yeah, I do too.
So,
I do too.
I mean, going back to that, so the contingency of 163, which is unspent,
Correct.
the other way to look at it is if you took that away, just say that's not even part of this, and you adjusted the tuition for the circuit breaker, you'd be at plus 20, so you'd be at about $35,000. So you're about 35,000
over.
under budget,
Yeah.
Right,
setting aside the contingency,
right.
which is really the intent, right?
Yeah,
Which is when we get to the end, that's when we have that discussion to say, hey,
exactly.
we're basically on budget, and here's this contingency, what do we want to do? And that's really where they're trying to go with it.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, thank you.
All right, excellent. All right, and then are you going to present the mailer, or you, Jim? The mailer.
Well, since Sue did just about all the work on the mailer,
All right.
Well, this is our standard format, and, you know, open for all and any edits and comments. But Jim everything has been updated in this. except when you get to the financial overview page where you see the paragraph in yellow.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the information from the town about the warrant book, you know, what article numbers and such. The other thing, and Dave, you may have a better idea, where I give the chart with the FY21 projected budget and the increase, we don't know yet
I
about,
would believe it.
okay.
Yeah, we're not gonna-
But I wouldn't put a giant purple line across it.
No, that's just a breaker showing the next year is what we're asking for.
Well,
I
maybe.
can take that out.
Now, we can separately do some edits, but it looks pretty good though. So would this be a 4-page? It's a
Yeah. It, 2-page
And you
fold
fold it in
and then
half,
fold in half.
Thank you, it's good we're doing it.
And I do want to point out on the last page with the FY20 grant summary, 2 things. One is Kevin got a $5,000 Mass Cultural Council grant. And he has is it a visiting artist, Jim, or a?
The composer?
Yeah, he has somebody come in and work with the students, and that's what he wrote that grant for. And also, for the first time in several years, we didn't realize we were gonna get it. We got some Title I money,
Oh, really?
which does assist with Tier 2, correct?
Have we received the check yet?
For Title I,
Yes.
we pay somebody from that Title I money. We get it monthly.
Oh, so we've been receiving this?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I have to put a request into the grants department
Is
every
that,
month.
is that math? Is that a one's math?
No, it's great.
Well, it can be
We're
math or
pleased.
literacy.
We filled out the forms,
Oh,
but we
good.
keep
Yeah.
crossing our fingers that we're actually
Nice.
getting the grant.
Yeah, Sue, I got $100 grant from the Cultural Council for the school too.
You did?
Did you report that to us?
Yeah, Matt knows about it.
For the
Oh, is that
tiles?
for your tile
Yeah.
project?
And I said to the woman, we got that funded by the PTO, and I said, so we really shouldn't take that money, and she said, you keep it. She said, because we like that idea.
Oh,
We
should
want
that
it.
be written up in there? We could.
I don't care, it's $100.
Send me something.
Okay.
Send you a tile.
I mean, what we didn't realize is we didn't do this one year, and you don't realize even our little mini budget flyer, the impact. People are waiting for
No,
this.
they are waiting. We learned that though.
We learned.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, you know,
Yeah.
when they read a little blurb, it means something to them.
Well, I'll send you the grant
Okay.
award. Thank
So
you
this-
so much, Matt. I pushed poor Matt for this for 3 years.
Just so you know, we mail this out, so we have a bulk mailing, and we mail it out so that the community receives it typically the Friday or Saturday prior to town meeting.
Right, so they're well informed.
And they don't get it, you know, 4 weeks ahead and lose it, and,
Right, or 4 weeks after and complain.
yeah.
Yeah, you want that. I mean, I was listening to the radio, so these voters for Buttigieg and Klobuchar were saying, they like decided on the drive to the poll, right? Like people have
Yeah.
like just this really narrow time. And these poor guys have been, you know, campaigning for like 18 months, right?
Yeah.
And people are making their decisions, so I agree with that. You want to get,
Yeah.
right?
Your target
The
audience.
sweet
at the
spot
right
of their
time.
awareness, yeah. Well, thank you for doing it, and,
Yeah, so Susan, I'll send, you send it in Word, right? So I'll fiddle
Yes.
around with it. Yeah, okay, thanks.
okay.
Thank you, Ms. Prey.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Gray.
Nice work.
Okay, so now we will move on to Jim's report on the district and superintendent goals.
So we thought it'd be a good time to give a little update on the superintendent goals and some of the district goals.
Yep. Bye, Jonathan.
Thank you, Mr. Nicot.
So if you recall our first goal, so I'm looking at the superintendent's goals right now. The first goal was district planning goal, visioning. And so we started off the year, we had a special school committee meeting where we determined what our goals of the visioning work were gonna be. And we identified that those were gonna be both coming up with a vision statement, vision document, and developing a portrait of a graduate for students who are gonna be leaving us in 8th grade. We also identified that Shannon was going to be the co-chair on the visioning team. We then reached out to the community to create a visioning committee, and we got a committee together, about 26, 28 people. And it's a pretty good cross-section of the community. faculty, staff, parents, some of the senior members of the community, town officials. So the visioning committee has had a number of meetings, and we've come up with a project plan for the visioning work. Thanks to Shannon's background, it's been a good way to structure. We have a, what did you just say you were looking at previously?
A grid?
A grid, yeah. So we've utilized grids effectively. Grids and tables have been really helpful. And in the last month and a half, we've really been in the process of engaging the community in some of this visioning work. You yourselves partook with some of the town officials in a session. Faculty and staff have been involved. Students have been involved. Parents have had multiple opportunities to be involved. So we've really gathered up a great deal of this visioning information, what people are visioning. We have a subcommittee that's working on doing some research into best practices and innovations. And in the March sessions, we're looking to synthesize all this information and really identify some key themes around which we will build our vision statement in the portrait of the graduate. So I would say that we are making significant progress on this. I think it's definitely something that people in the community are aware of. They feel like they've had the opportunity to be involved. We're still giving more opportunities for people to be involved as this goes on, but I think it's a conversation that's resonating and we're making progress. Shannon, would you like to?
Sure, I could add a little report from our first meeting of the Innovation and Best Practices Subcommittee. Essentially, we had, let's see, about 8 to 10 people participate. We set a time for our next meeting to be March 11th, and we gave ourselves an assignment to create a one-page summary of our findings. Essentially, to start the ball rolling, Jim and I kind of boiled down an initial list of some of the themes that have been emerging throughout all the different groups, from the parents, from us, from the town leaders, from the faculty, and definitely themes like project-based learning and empathy and caring, social skills and academic.
Multi-generational,
Yeah,
as Matt referred to,
yeah.
multi-grade level and
Yes.
how we
yeah.
approach things. Yeah.
And then those things have been hit again and again, so we gave this subcommittee that list and said, okay, these are likely to make the cut. So who wants to raise their hand and do a deep dive into a couple of these categories and collect resources that can then be used later and for a couple of different purposes. One, to really give us all a strong sense that we're doing research-based practices. We're not just arbitrarily throwing stuff at the wall.
Right.
And in addition to that, when we come to the implementation phase, it can be a cache of resources for administrators and teachers to go back to as a jumping off point as they start to figure out how to put these things in place. So, because I love a table, we made a little table that we shared. I seem to be obsessed with them. That we shared on our shared drive. And one of the school visioning committee members has talked about, this in terms of like the big questions. What are we doing, how are we doing it, why, when, and who? And so the what is all the skills, the content, the structures, and the how is the research-based best practices. So as people on the research committee go through and find things, they're going to either put links in here or create entire folders and put in articles and research and resources. So because some people these things might clump together, some people might want to do more than one subject, we're just going to see how this progresses, and when we meet next on March 11th, each one of these 10 or so people will have a one-page summary that we can then have an artifact to share with you all.
Oh, good. That'd be great.
That was kind of a lot, but there you go.
That's awesome.
It's great.
It's amazing.
It's come along. It's the level of interest and enthusiasm is really encouraging.
That's great.
So happy to be facilitating it.
Thank you so much, Shannon.
My pleasure.
And Jim.
Shannon's killing it.
No, I just.
So then our second goal was on a student development goal, which really alluded to the portrait of the graduate. And really those two are linked together in their practices. So the goal is to identify the skills, characteristics, qualities, mindsets, and literacies we want our students to graduate with. And that is part of the visioning work right now. So we're hoping at the end of this year, part of our culminating document will be the portrait of the graduate.
Wow.
Goal number 3 for the superintendent's goals was the admin team consistency and supervision. So our admin team is changing all the time, right? I thought some of our newest members are out there in the audience right now. But one of our goals is really, in our roles as supervisors, how do we kind of make sure that we maintain expectations and consistency in our practices to support teachers as they go through their process. So that's important to us. So we've spent some time early this year really kind of in like a workshop to develop that consistency and make sure that all of our practices are aligned so that if you're being supervised by Matt, it's a similar process in response and feedback to what Lori's providing, because we are coming at it from different places. We also want to make sure that we are supporting one another if there are questions or challenges that we encounter in those practices. We also want to make sure we're adhering to the timelines, because the timelines are pretty complicated, especially if you're new and you're coming into public education for the first time with the evaluation system, and what's a formative, what's a summative, what's a formative evaluation versus a formative assessment, and just making sure that we are consistent in those practices. So I think we have a pretty well-oiled machine. We have outstanding professionals, both in the supervisory roles and in the educational roles, so I think that's functioning really well right now. But it's an ongoing practice to make sure that we continue to check in. We just passed our formative phase, right, in January, making sure that everybody has had the observations they need and received the feedback and received the reports, and we'll continue on through the end of the year. So I think that's going well. Do you want to say something?
Yeah.
You go right ahead.
I just want to say that as a new person coming in, I know it can be a little expensive, but the Teach Point program is so beneficial, incredibly helpful. It keeps you organized, it keeps all the information right there for you. It allowed me to put all the systems into place so that everybody got everything they needed. So
This is a system for what?
the system that we use to write up all of our evaluations of our staff and to do all of our assessments.
Is that one you brought in, or did we have that?
No, it
No,
was
we've
here.
had that.
No, it was here and it's great, so I just wanted to mention that
Good.
This is
that's
helpful.
helpful.
Yeah.
So then, looking at our district improvement goals, so we have a variety of district improvement goals, but I wanted to focus on one, which is really the focus of a lot of the work that's taken place in the school, the big rocks that we're moving, and that is our tiered system of supports. So this year, we have a substantial focus on our tiered supports with regard to professional development and how we're using our early release time. And at the elementary school, the elementary teachers, through Dennett's leadership, they're focused on the universal design for learning, which is really tiered 1. How do teachers design lessons and instruction that really provide multiple opportunities in different ways for students to understand the information, access the information, and demonstrate an understanding of that information? So we've brought in trainers to work with our staff. We've spent early release time giving teams opportunities to think together and implement new practices. When I say trainers, we actually brought in Tara Trainer. That's her name, to do professional development
Trainer.
Who would she be when she grew up?
in December.
Trainer, the trainer.
At the same time, at the middle school, Matt's working on providing Tier 2 support. So as you know, we have a new schedule we piloted this year that provided a flex block, which provides opportunities for the middle school teachers to support students. We also implemented some universal screeners in the middle school, which allows the teachers to have a better grasp of who needs some additional support and then monitor that progress over time, which is outstanding. We haven't been using that in recent years, so that's very positive.
I would add to that, for the 8th graders, I think this was really helpful in their placements for the high school too. Yeah.
What is that?
Well, just the fact that, I look at my population of 1, and I can see that the support she's gotten in math led the recommendation for her math placement at the high school, and I totally understood what it was because I knew it was happening with the tier support.
So so Matt's leading that, and it's happening through the schedule change. So again, as I said, it's a pilot. Matt's work is continuing as they're they're tweaking that. How can they look at the schedule we have now and make some modifications for next year? But you can also see how that schedule through FlexBlock is allowing teachers some opportunity to even start imprinting some of that visioning work, right? So you received the email, you were talking earlier about the one Matt sent out for our 8th grade teachers who are looking to do a project, have the students be involved with a passion project, some student choice as to what they want to study, but also at the same time looking to reach out to the broader community in that multi-generational approach. So you can see the ideas that we're talking about envisioning, they resonate with faculties and they put them right in, they implement them immediately. So we have those 2 major roles in Tier 1, then we have Tier 2 at the middle school, and then of course we have Tier 3 with Lori's leadership coming in and looking at our programming that we have on site. And this kind of slips into our 5th goal, but we'll talk about it. But also looking at her entrance plan and the West Ed report and identifying our strengths and areas for kind of growth in special education, and then leading her faculty and staff through professional development to really enhance and build up their ability to meet the very diverse needs of our students. And she's deep into the planning for next year, right? So as she came on board, many of the structures and the assignments and the approaches were in place. So she's been kind of fixing the plane while it's flying. I guess that's one of the analogies, right? But now she's got the opportunity to work with Matt, work with Dennett, and really make sure that what we have in place reflects the best practices and what's best for students and how we can best meet those needs. So those are like the tiered support. It's our 3rd district objective, ensuring equity and excellence in learning for all. But that's really been the focus of the work that's been taking place in our school.
So I've got a question on that. I think it's probably a Lori question, but the Concord system talks a lot about UDL, but they also use the word RTI, right? Response to intervention. So my pretty raw understanding of that is that, so UDL would say, okay, we've got to make sure that we teach the lesson in such a way that all the kids, at least all the kids who are not on IEPs, let's say, can grasp the lesson.
All learner types.
All learner types, thank you. Then Tier 1. So Tier 2, though, to me, is kind of an RTI thing, right? So we're going to go in and be more invasive. And at least the way the Concord School describes it, it's like, all right, we're going to do this for 90 days or 30 or 60, and we're going to assess, like, and how is that, and in an IEP you would do that, that's what an IEP does, right? But in the Tier 2 environment, what's the framework, if you will, for, because I'm not seeing it here, I'm saying utilize, it says effectively address student needs, blah, 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 but how do you assess the efficacy?
Of the Tier 2 support?
Yeah.
Okay. So it looks a little different in elementary than it does in middle school.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons. So I'll talk about middle school first and fill in and then on. So with middle school, you have the Star Renaissance and you have the ALEX, right? These 2 programs that they do assessments on 3 times a year.
Okay.
Right?
Or more.
Or more.
But yeah, it depends on the child, like universal assessing 3 times.
So that is every single student in the grade.
Okay.
And then Matt gets the data, and Matt and I sit down, and in fact, we've been sitting down with Jim as well, and teachers, and looking at that data, analyzing that data to see where kids are, how kids are doing. In other words, are we seeing a growth index? Because it'll give us a growth index on both of those programs well. But it also shows us like who's struggling, and then we dive deeper. So for example, with Star Renaissance, which is a reading comprehension, if they're not doing as well, then we have to look at why. So we have to dig down deeper. Oftentimes, the middle school ELA teachers will know, but if they're not sure, then they'll either bring it to my attention or the special educator attention or all of us in a group meeting, and we'll just do a deeper dive to see if we can figure out, is this an inferential thing? Is this actually laborious decoding issue that kind of slipped by? So I feel like we have a lot of things in place to help monitor it. And then as they go through Tier 2 instruction, all of the Tier 2 instruction is happening by the general ed teachers in middle school.
Yeah,
It's not happening by specialists.
right.
And they'll collect data to see how their kids are doing, and then they decide.
What's the
okay,
interval, like, so you have the meeting, you identify an issue, you analyze it, then you put in a support. and
Yeah, so we did universal screening within the first month of school.
Right.
In math and, yeah, in September, in both subject areas. Identified kids to
Yeah.
cohort for targeted interventions.
Yep,
Intensity of intervention depended upon the child's need.
yep,
Because some kids, as you can imagine, need both supports, both
Right.
English or reading comprehension as well as math support. So there's a little bit of horse trading in terms of, because we only have 2 blocks in our current schedule,
Yeah, okay.
which is something I'm looking to do differently next year to
Okay, yeah.
build on our success. But the teachers see the kids in the classroom,
yep,
then supplement it with curriculum to
Right.
support whatever
Yep.
identified deficiencies they have. I think we have all completed 1 cycle, and in 1 grade, I think they're gonna aim for 3 cycles.
what's a cycle?
Half the school year
Okay,
for the targeted intervention.
okay, so your recheck of that student is like after half a year of,
No, well, yes and no. So we're assessing all students
right,
3
but,
times a year.
but the ones you've identified, so I get
For
that.
example,
Yeah.
some students went through tier 2, and out of that, one of those students
Right.
now is on my radar.
Right,
Because they may need to, they did not respond to the tier 2
Right.
intervention in the same way that the staff.
right,
will
and so that interval, right, so the interval from the time you implement a tier 2 to the point where you either say, it's been great and we don't need it,
Yep.
it's continued, or on to Lori, what's that like? Is that,
I would say anywhere from half to either a trimester or a.
okay,
or
so
half of the
on that
school.
order.
This year was like, this year's just, we probably did it at the end of September, early October, the
Mhm.
first, and then
Yeah.
you had the second round data in
In
January,
January, we're looking at all the data.
right? So it's probably a 3-month
Okay,
turnaround.
so that's what I would guess.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting, so that's the middle school model. If we look at tier 2 at the elementary
Very
level,
different.
it's very, like with Kathy Macklis as a tier 2 literacy person, I think she does 6 to 8 weeks. She sees the number of kids, 6 to 8 weeks, does the assessment, switches, some students move out, new students move in.
Right.
It's,
So you also have a teacher who's, a
that's her
single teacher who's probably
primary job.
almost daily assessing that anyway, right? So-
Absolutely, and they see the kids now twice. I mean, once during their academic block, but then
Yeah.
on top of that.
Well, you're talking middle school, yeah, but I'm saying,
Yeah, I'm saying 5.
at the grade school,
Right.
the homeroom teacher's
Same every day.
assessing in real time, I would
And
guess.
honestly, like by middle school,
Yeah.
we have a good sense of who these kids are.
No, I know.
Unless they're new to us, they've been with
Right.
us, and frankly, the ones that come are the ones that may have like just moved in the year before, or that this particular school year. You have a pretty good sense, so we have an understanding what might be going on in their lives and is contributing them to needing a little extra attention
Right.
at this point in time. But with elementary, sometimes it's like, they were just sliding and they needed a little bit of intervention, and now they're back where they should be.
Right,
But there is a great system in place, it's called Child Study Team, there's,
right,
you
okay,
know,
good.
you meet weekly.
Good.
There's some kids that we say, nope, we're not going up, we don't even need to go to RTI. It's very, very clear because we put these new early indicators in place, especially for dyslexia, so we're knowing much earlier, people are much more educated on what to look for, so we're like, nope, we're gonna do a deeper dive now, we're not even gonna wait. And then there's other students where it might be coming from an intentional issue, and they just might need some extra support, and so they'll meet with Kathy.
So if you identify an LBLD at whatever stage, you immediately move that child to an IEP environment?
If it is a specific learning disability, yes.
Good one, Sarah.
Sarah,
And
so
on
much.
on the classroom side, can you also tease out like what are teaching strengths and maybe teaching weaknesses? Like, can you see that maybe while everybody's doing okay in a certain kind of subject matter, the kids who are normally, that there's not as much strengths as you would normally see? Like, can you tease out also what might be needed in the classroom as the teacher side that they should
right.
work on, that maybe they're not reaching the kids as effectively as you might
That's
hope?
where I feel like I'm very fortunate to be working collaboratively with Bennett, because I'm the one that usually keeps an eye on those tier 2 kids that like I'm really worried about. But Janet is spending time meeting with his staff all the time to talk about the UDL, the methodology, okay, is this lesson going too fast? Or do we need to think differently about how this looks? Do we need to think about, we have this, spiral math program. How is that? What do we need to do for those kids that are having difficulty with that?
Yeah.
So he's kind of dealing with the general end on that end, but we also work together to talk to these kids all the time.
I'm wondering more from these 3 assessments that you do at the middle school.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Like, you might be able to also tease out from those scores, not based on the first, but over the arc of a year, you might be able to tease out because I know that there are some when our kids get to the high school, there are some things that anecdotally you universally hear are not as strong as others that our kids had, right? And you would hope that, right? You would hope that you'd be able to look at these kinds of things and say, okay, not just looking at the kids who are flagged for issues, but just universally saying,
Socially.
the benchmark here is around like 80% comprehension when, even for the kids who normally are in the 90 to 100%, right? Like, you would think that these assessments might be helpful in that kind of stuff to work with the teachers to say, the way that this subject matter is being taught isn't necessarily, isn't reaching the kids effectively, right? No?
So the
Oh,
assessment, it's a great point. The assessments are standards-based. So underneath the assessment, you say, how did a kid do holistically on reading comprehension with Star Renaissance? But then you can dig deeper into the standards and say, oh wow, they really struggled on inferencing, which are tied to state standards. And then there's some validity there, and it's a valid assessment because you then look at the MCAS scores and you go, ooh, this child struggled on the MCAS here, and they should continue to struggle here on the reading comprehension part of Star Renaissance. That actually, when our teachers saw that, they went, oh, this Star Renaissance thing is good, because it built confidence.
So, validated, but MCAS is there's test taking, there's a lot of other layers.
There's a lot to both of them. There's a lot to both
But
of them.
are you saying,
But
like,
my point
if
is-
we
my-
see
my point
inferencing in a couple places, then maybe we're
My
not
point
teaching
is, let's
inferencing
say
the right
you
way?
look at a classroom, you look at the 70 kids in a class, right? And you say 50 of those kids didn't do so well on the same set on question 3, right? At that point, one might make a point and say, it's not that all those kids need an intervention, but rather there
teacher
needs to be
needs
an
an
intervention in the methodology of
Or look at the
education,
Yeah.
in the way that the stuff is
ELA
taught.
teachers I didn't go to the math meeting, but the ELA teachers, I went to their meeting in middle school, they had done this, they knew, they said, these are the things we're gonna do for everybody. The good thing about, we're only in our first year of data, but when we look at like what these 5th graders look like this year, at the end of the year, and then we look at them midway through 6th grade, they're still having trouble with the same area, then we have to think about what methodology are we using, because we knew it going in, we knew this was an issue, and it's still an issue. And by keeping the same system, the same program that's doing this assessment, we'll be able to identify that. One of the things that, when I had it out on the table with Matt and Jim, we noticed, it's a color-coded thing, right? So it's like green. The green to the left are the really high line. And we noticed that as the kids got older, the green got thicker on the left-hand side.
What does that mean?
So that means
More
that
kids score
the
higher.
older kids are doing, even though the test gets harder, the older kids did the best. 8th grade did the best.
Yeah.
And so what that says to me is that we must be, even though we didn't use this particular program to assess them all along, something must be being done well, because our 8th grade looks really solid. Now, it could just be coincidence, and we'll have this data over time,
That's the thing.
but every grade did a little bit better on the test.
Well, I mean, Sarah before you were on school committee, right, you shared that, I think it was New York Times data, I think it came from you, right?
Yeah, the student
Which
growth.
shows, like,
Have you seen that?
the student growth?
The New York Times in 2017 did this whole thing about like a new way to measure school success, and it was based on student growth, not just not a snapshot of skills, but how much does a student grow from grades 3 through 8. And literally, if you look at it, Carlisle is in its own.
It's like the outlier dot.
It's the outlier dot, and it's in this little upper quadrant.
It's like 3 years ago.
Corner right there.
Yeah.
So, very good. So, and it showed that basically that kids, while they already start ahead of the game, our third graders already start a couple of years above the average kid in terms of skills, that then they grow 7 years, like 7 point something years over the arc of their 3rd through 8th grade, which is like 2 years beyond what any other school in America does.
So the trend is strong to your point, but I think, but Sarah's other point is worth noting, I believe, that's great. So we develop a baseline. But if we see a cohort underperforming to our high standards, even though we're way above state standards, whatever, it does bear examination into, it could be unique to that cohort. Sometimes you just get a mix that's not quite the same. But it could also begin to point to some, deficiencies, is maybe too strong a word, but.
I think Matt pointed out, it could be issues with the curriculum, like.
Well, it could be that.
But I mean, that's one way to just, you phrase it and say like, but that's what they use that data to then, all right,
Yeah.
if we do see a trend, okay, here's an area where
Here's a data point.
Here's the state average, and usually we're at 20 points above the state average. Here we're only 6 points above the state average. What is that? And
Right.
can we look at our practices
Right.
and see if we can do things differently? Because, absolutely,
Right.
they use
Because
that
we
data.
want to be less in the business of recuperating stuff, that if the 5th graders are, not as strong in some particular subject, but they recuperated in 6th grade, you don't want the onus of making that recuperation on the 6th grade team. You want to address the issue in the 5th grade
And if you
context.
really get quantitative, you
I think.
begin to develop cohort-centric data where it may be the cohort.
Yeah.
And maybe that cohort, Lori, we were having that conversation at our last bed, where you have a couple cohorts of high, where there's just a high population of kids with certain educational needs. That cohort bears watching over time. How it responds may be completely different
Yep.
than what we normally do. I would say that's, good ways to, and another, again, anecdotally, years ago, before most people were here, that are in this room, we had except for some older people, but we had a very large cohort of, 85, 90 kids, something, and it just wasn't good over time, like the academics just weren't that good. And I think it was just because those kids were stretching that class model. There were just too many kids in the classroom. But that's all kind of good stuff you can get out of these regular assessments.
And that's why the MCAS would be good, right? Because it allows you to gather some longitudinal data
Yeah.
on multiple class, right? So
Right,
you can
exactly.
see the trend
Longitudinal data.
years.
Yeah.
The problem is, like every 2 years, they throw a monkey wrench, whether it's a park or whatever, so you really lose
No, but you're
that
doing
trend.
your own way.
But now we're doing
Much
this,
better.
but this is, now that we're doing it year one,
Yeah.
subsequent years, we'll be able
That's
to
good. That's
get
very
that trend data ourselves.
And I have a quick question. Do we have flexibility for the teachers to adjust as they're looking at those results coming out of the assessment? Do our teachers have the flexibility to, collaborate and adjust the curriculum to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I met vertically, when I mean vertically, I meant the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th grade English teachers. We all got the data, and we looked at it collaboratively together, and we said, what do we notice? Concurrent to that, we were doing the same thing, and then we shared, and then some of the teachers met with Jim and I and Lori to analyze the data, and then they reflect on it, and they make changes in their own classrooms. The interesting thing about Star Renaissance, actually Alex too, is the data shows, when you do it multiple times, multiple data points, and they show you, because it's a nationally normed assessment, predictive growth ranges. So if you take an assessment in October and then you take one in January, the bar has been raised because it assumes growth. And we look at the ranges where kids should fall, and we went, oh yeah, well, that kid is a green, meaning they're doing well in the assessment. That growth is, something's going on there. So then we literally click on the screen, and then it shows you the child and how they performed on standards in the first assessment versus the second assessment. So it is pretty powerful. I'm impressed with it.
Question? These are, so that if the tests are to standards, right, state standards,
State standards, yeah.
State standards, why can't those just suffice instead of doing MCAT? Like, why doesn't the state, if you have this constant data, why can't you just say basically, we've taken care of our math and our ELA, like,
Because we can't.
MCAS? Well, there's another battle for you to pick when
So,
you're picking
yeah,
the
so
low,
we-
the low.
He has a chance, Sarah, he has a chance at the Lowell thing.
So it was interesting, like, just out of conversation, right? If you go back 4 or 5 years, you may have heard a conversation around district-determined measures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you had?
Yeah.
And this was a thing the state tried to move in, but they were gonna have the districts determine measures in all subjects, right? And I would like to think that was a step in that direction, but it wasn't. It was a step to further enlarge the assessment as opposed to decrease. Like, they were still gonna have MCAS, but since they couldn't have MCAS, they could only have MCAS in 3 subjects, they wanted
Yeah.
district-determined measures in every other area. That's not a battle I'm gonna be able to make any headway on.
Silly.
It is silly.
But as they say at the state, they're still working to try to revise the assessment system and kind of lessen the number of assessments and lessen the time that we're dedicated to, training children to take those assessments.
I think one of the upside of the MCAS test is that you get to know how you do it, comparatively with other districts, because we don't have the same curriculums. Everyone is doing their own thing, so there's no real way to know how district does unless everyone takes some sort of standardized.
Yeah, and it's all aligned with the state standards, right? So that it's really to ensure that everyone's teaching the state standards. So it's a practice. I'm not here to advocate for it or against it. It's a practice. But I think everyone's slowly moving in an opposite direction. Even through our visioning question, like how dedicated should we be to the standards? Or are we willing to strike out on new ground and new land?
You even hear that over at the high school.
I'm going to jump into the last goal was supporting the new director of student support services.
That wasn't even the subject of this.
Nice segue,
On our agenda.
It's just the thing, we need to support her. But that was one of the goals for the year. And so Lori came in, did her entry plan, as we said. She read the West Ed report. We've created actually a special education subcommittee to support Lori and just to have those conversations around special education. She's reached out with the CPAC, made new connections with the CPAC, and actually special education subcommittee and CPAC are going to be meeting together after vacation and looking at ways that they can further engage the parent community and get feedback. And then CPAC is actually looking to engage with other CPACs to see how we can share more information, kind of crowdsourcing the work and seeing where we're moving. And I think we're making progress in supporting Lori.
You feel supported, Lori?
I do feel supported, I do.
She gets a lot of help, is what she said.
I don't think she needs a lot of help. No, I think
Yeah.
That phrase.
She's leading this thing.
That's why we put you way up in the stairs, to slow you down.
Yeah, she hit the ground running as soon as
She
she
did.
walked into that door.
She was running. I'm not sure which direction. But she was running. I'm just kidding. No, and we're so lucky to have Lori. Like, thank you.
All right.
And I think that was, as I said, I really focused on, so those are the superintendent's goals. One of the goals of the superintendent are all those district improvement goals, but really the preponderance of the work and the district improvement goals have been the multi-tiered system of supports, which is tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, which we just talked about. So I don't know if there's any other questions.
No, I think we're good. That was excellent, guys. Thank you. We're very lucky to have you.
Okay.
All right, so moving on, the next thing on our agenda is the school calendar discussion, and we're going to move that back to March. So we will move on to the case agreement. Jim, you're busy
I'm gonna
tonight.
shut this off. So I'll start, the case agreement. So for those of you that may have been here a year and a half ago, we're a member of two collaboratives. We're a member of the EDCO Collaborative, and we're a member of the CASE Collaborative. CASE Collaborative, we are part of, they offer educational services, but also they provide transportation. We're part of, and that's a great service. So last time we spoke, the EDCO Collaborative was redoing their bylaws.
Yeah.
Again, with regard to, there were districts who were leaving EDCO. So they had to make arrangements, and we changed the EDCO bylaws to address if people left, what part of the liability they carried with them, and for how long. Now, the CASE agreement, thanks Matt, thanks Laura, the CASE agreement is along similar lines. The change that they're looking to make, well, there's one change regarding protected classes, and that's just an update we've made in multiple places. But the other change is really with regard to if districts want to step away from using CASE transportation.
Oh.
The notice that they needed to give in the bylaws was 6 months. In the last 4 years, we've had 2 districts step away from using
wow.
CASE transportation. The second district is doing so currently. This is their last year, and next year they're not going to CASE transportation. And that has knock-on effects for all the other members of CASE. So because of the way that CASE bills for the transportation, it somewhat allows us to budget effectively because we get a year planning. But the impact of the organization leaving, the 6 months doesn't give us enough time to mitigate the impact. So the change in the bylaws would have you would still be able to leave CASE transportation, but you would need to give
A year.
2 years,
2 years.
2 years.
24 months.
So instead of
notice.
fixing their kludgy billing system, they just impose the 2-year.
Well,
I mean,
it really, one of the greatest assets for districts to be part of CASE is the transportation
Right.
service. Like that's the key. So it just, we would prefer people not leave, right? But if you have to leave and if it's more viable for you to leave as a district, then you go ahead. Interesting note, just because just came aware of this in the last couple of weeks, we had the first district that left. I won't use the name because I'm going to share it, but they left probably 2 years ago. And in speaking with their superintendent, they thought they were going to a better option, and they've been paying consistently like $80,000 more a year with their new option, and they're looking to go back, looking to get back into the CASE.
Got it.
So it's really just about changing how much warning the districts have to use.
Okay.
I think it's on page 7 and page 10 of the.
Yep.
And what is the process for coming back in?
They have to pay twice.
So process of coming back in,
Is it the same that you need to give
Is
like
it-
24 months notice?
no, you can probably get back in, but as you come into CASE transportation, there's also a certain amount of buy-in, because as a new district joins, they're gonna put pressures on the CASE transportation. So usually if you join, you also have to purchase vans coming in. Transportation, like you have to add to the,
To the solution, yeah.
so that's just one of the additional charges. So just like in the other one, we take a vote. If everybody agrees to the changes, we take a vote. The chair can sign the page. In the other note, so when EDCO did this, when EDCO did this, the very next meeting, I came to the school committee, I presented, we agreed, we signed. 3 months later, there was another change. They're like, oh, so if anyone didn't get around to it, well, it's like, no, I jumped on the bin. So in this case, I let a couple months slide until I got the, hey, reminder, you need to bring this to the school committee. So
So are we voting this meeting or next meeting?
it can go whichever way you want.
Okay.
We can stick to our protocols and go
Yeah,
next
I think
meeting.
we should stick to it. All right, so the next thing on the agenda is the policy discussion, which perhaps I'll lead. So first of all, thank you all for, especially Sarah, and Nancy, all your hard work on going through all those policies over several meetings. It was great because I think we got through more policies than previous years. And if we can do this every year, we will be hitting the mark to get through all policies within a 3-year rotation. So since we've all read the policies, and I don't think Nancy's had any, sort of went through them together on the 22nd of January, we'd like to vote on all the policies we reviewed in one voting block. So if everybody's comfortable with that, somebody can.
Do you want me to read the policies?
No, please don't.
No, I think Nancy said we
Just
have.
documenting it.
The
It's
names.
nice to just have the names, to be just.
We can read rule by exclusion though, right? So we can move all of them, read them out, and people can pipe up if they want to exclude them from the vote.
Oh, okay.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Sorry.
I didn't understand it either.
So I would move to accept all 29 policies listed. And then if that's seconded, then,
We can discuss.
well, the discussion is you read them, and if somebody wants to
Make notes.
make it, say, exclude it from the bulk approval, we'll
Okay.
pull it out.
So we still read it after.
Just read the
Just
name.
read
Within
list.
the
Yeah.
conversation.
Sounds good.
All right.
So that's my motion.
All right. Second.
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Shannon. Discussion. All right, Jim, shall we read them? Will you read them?
I will read them.
Okay.
The policy on non-discrimination on the basis of disability, the policy on equal educational opportunity, policy on sexual harassment, policy on safety program, policy on school committee ethics, policy on administrative structure, policy on damage and vandalism, policy on distribution of information, policy on school visits, policy on the wellness policy, communicable disease policy, medication administration policy, athletic concussion policy, policy on buildings and grounds, safety and security, the no idling policy, tobacco products on school premises prohibited policy, the emergency plans policy, the homeschooling policy, teaching about drugs, alcohol, tobacco, and controlled substances policy, bullying prevention policy, prohibition of hazing policy, entrance age policy, physical restraint policy, student welfare policy, residency policy, school attendance policy, student discipline policy, student rights and responsibilities policy, and the student transportation by staff in private vehicles policy.
Anyone have anything? All in favor?
All right, very good.
Excellent, you guys.
Well
That
played.
is so good. Nice job, Jim.
All right.
Thank you.
That's excellent. All right, so now we will move on to communications and correspondence. Do we have anything, Nancy?
We don't.
Oh, good, no one likes this. Superintendent's report. Jim, you are so busy.
All right, let's see what we have. So, first I want to thank those who participated on the search committee for our business manager. That's
Yeah.
David Modell, Scott Triola, Priscilla Dumka, Linda Venaria, Sue Prey, and Lori Bruce. So we have named the finalists, Ann Mahan, and we are in the process of working out all the nuances, but I think everything should be settled, and I'll be bringing her to the March meeting for
Introduction.
introduction and confirmation.
Oh, yeah. I forgot we signed off on that.
So I think it's a confirmation.
Yeah, I think it was too.
So another thing going on, DESE chapter. So I sent something about the SOA, Student Opportunities Act, which increases the amount of Chapter 70 funds that the town will be receiving. So the town will be receiving $20,000 additional Chapter 70 funds. It's nice. And also there's some requirements on school districts, so I'll have to bring a report to you explaining how we're gonna use the additional $20,000, which really aren't an additional $20,000 that we'll be receiving. We get to use the short form because there are a number of larger districts, urban districts, more needy districts who receive upwards of millions of dollars in addition. So we'll use the short form, and I'll be bringing that to you probably in March for submission in April. We're just going to explain how we were using the money originally, so that should cover us for that. As I told you in a previous correspondence, we're also involved in the cybersecurity awareness training through the town. So the town identified a state program on cybersecurity awareness, and a number of administrators and the gatekeepers to the school, right, Nancy, will be participating in that training. I also want to thank Lori Hunter and Mike Masrul and the team from CCHS because they did come out and host an 8th grade parent transition night
It was
here.
great.
And it was well attended, and I think it was very informational, and I think people appreciated the opportunity to
They
meet
did.
and get to know. and
Fantastic
see
feedback
face.
on that.
Yeah,
It was
Really
great.
appreciated it.
It was, and I was impressed to see the whole
I
team
know,
came out,
everybody.
and they spent the time with us, so it was really good. Also, been met with Tim Goddard this week, and I'm going to be meeting with Tim next week to discuss, how we can continue to share resources with the town. So we have a couple of ideas that we'll be discussing, and along the lines of what you thought, maybe. Next week is school vacation week. We can't forget that. The following week, we have the special ed subcommittee and the CPAC meeting. And then on March 5th, the Council on Aging breakfast. So the admin team hosts a breakfast each year for the Council on Aging. That's on the 5th. And then I had the opportunity after we did our visioning session, I had the opportunity with Kate Reed, and we talked a little bit more about intergenerational opportunities. So we're exploring some of those opportunities. We discussed how we might be able to make something work in the cafeteria sometimes in the spring, other opportunities for volunteers, just to connect the community in that way, which is great. And then we heard about the project in 8th grade and already reaching out to that community. So Matt sent a correspondence out to parents, but he's also going to be reaching out to the COA with that same request if there are people that have skill sets that
Since I they don't might be have
able
a
to
kid
bring in.
in the school, I didn't get the letter, so could you fill me in a little?
I will attach it to tomorrow's update, but yes, I will fill it. So they're creating, during that flex time,
Yes.
they're looking at opportunities to do passion projects. Like, what are students interested in, doing some research and doing a project on? And then reaching out to the community to see if there are people with expertise in that field. So they try to cast a wide net on a variety of areas of expertise that people might have, but once the students start generating their ideas, I think we can reach out in a more specific way as to what type of opportunities, information people may have, and then we can figure out how we can bring people together, whether it's via email or teleconferencing or bringing people into the school, how we can make that work to support student learning, but also support that intergenerational relationship in the town.
That's great.
So there's a lot of exciting, so even though we're still in the process, the ideas that are percolating up are kind of moving along.
And was Kate working on possibly the tax abatement for the seniors?
So Kate was going to do some research into how many of those spots or I'm not sure how it works, but they identify so many different situations that people can have and see what the availability of how many slots there are and how much money and how we can make some of those pieces work on this side.
That's great. Thanks for being so proactive on that, Jen.
You have a lot of good people doing all
Yeah,
these
I
things.
agree. All right. Do we have any member committee reports?
Yes. So from the region, I have a few reports coming up. So definitely wanted to highlight that the 9th grade academy was rolled out in Carlisle on January 21st. So that's a big part of the transition of our students, of 8th graders to 9th grade, and a big part of focus of the region on wellness of the students. And that focus will continue as many of you might have heard of the suicide at the high school of our high school students. So that focus on wellness and mental health will continue through various programs. So in response to that student suicide, I thought that that was really well handled and the students well supported. The information that we have received coming from the high school, there was a massive counselor team came from K through 8 counselors and Carlisle were brought in to the high school to help students deal with the deal with the loss, and they set up the support system for the students and for the teachers. Those counselors were definitely familiar with the kids. The amount of help that was provided really helped the staff plan, help counselors identify students that might need support, and they were able to make extensive lists of kids needing ongoing check-ins and close communication. So all of those kids that were having harder time dealing with that, those kids could be followed. So that's for that. And the Center for Parents and Teachers made plans for speakers that were brought in as well to help with that. From the district coming, so district discussed planning for the purchase of electric buses. At the last meeting, they voted to award the contract for the financing of the 2020 purchase of 3 school buses for the region, and award the contract for the financing of the purchase of the 3 school buses. So it looks like the lowest bidder was the TD equipment financing.
And that's for the high school for
That's for
our
the
kids?
region for our kids, yeah.
Oh, good, okay.
And then on the Concord side, they're also planning to purchase some buses, and the discussion continues in terms of bringing the electric buses.
So on that, just, neither here nor there, except for sustainability purposes. So the price points of the electric buses are approximately 4x, I think, a diesel at this moment. But there's a pretty good amount of subsidy available. Now, we don't own our own buses, so, it's a Concord issue right now, but in the long run, if we're going long run, we should look at their experience. They have one bus right now. They had a lot of teething problems over the last 3 years. It was completely unoperational for like a year.
Is that right?
The electric bus?
Yeah, the one electric bus they got was unoperational for a year. Then it became operational, and Concord became, I guess, the center of excellence for mechanics on the electric bus. They're the only ones who know how to do it. So other districts were bringing their buses to Concord to get fixed. So now they're kind of up in that curve. So now they're looking at
Cottage industry.
buying 2 more under a grant program, and then 2 more after this. So they're starting to step into it. And I think, at some point, it would be worth looking at that experience maybe in conjunction with. I don't know if a private company operates the bus. I don't know any of that, but a bus is a big, it's a statement, right?
Yeah.
So,
It'd be nice if,
it's just a point to think about in the future.
What do they pay for a bus? A diesel?
A diesel is, what is it?
Was it like around 8,
Yeah.
after the subsidies, I think was
No, the
it
diesel
8?
is not subsidized.
Yeah, just,
80,
Oh,
some I can give that figure.
The electric buses.
But the electric bus is a lot more, but it's big subsidies are available.
So it comes down, actually, the price comes down to what the price
Of the diesel.
would be of.
Well, and it will
Of the
continue,
operating
you know,
Right.
it's just a volume thing, right? So
Technically, if it.
the interesting thing is, I
operates.
think, the initial bus purchase, they call it the VW bus, I think, because it was a Volkswagen settlement. It was the big diesel scandal, but
Oh.
trickled down to the states, that the states were deploying. It's pretty funny.
Oh, that's cool.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
No, this is great. And then on the region side, at the high school, we have a new program that was just created, and we sat through the presentation of that was brought in by the students and the faculty. The program is called Launch Program. It's a new program created for special education students age 18 to 22. After completion of the 4 traditional years of high school, typically they transition from the Pathways program over there. And in that program, students can participate in social activities, practice job skills, learn to do things independently, and transition to independent living. So this is completely a brand new program that didn't exist before. And the nice thing about this program is that the students have the opportunity to practice those real life skills at the community partners, such as the Council on Aging, the Body Dog, Goodnow Library, Drumlin Farm, Discovery Museum, and Cooperative Elder Services, so they're able to get small jobs and practice those life skills. So the setup is really interesting. And then on sustainability, they had a speaker come in, Varshini Parkash, co-founder of Sunrise Movement, spoke at Willard School at the Climate Solutions Speaker Series. That's the Sunrise Movement has one of their 500 hubs at a high school, CCHS, and one at Concord Academy. The Sunrise Movement is youth-led grassroots organization mobilizing young people nationwide to push for aggressive climate change legislation through climate strikes, founded by those two Acton students, Varshini and Sara Farkash. So we didn't even know that we have a student organization around that. And then last one, master planning. Master planning is looking for our input for 5 critical areas of overlap between the school's planning and the master planning. And those are the demographics, school enrollment projection, including MEDCA and school choice programs. They're interested in that, and impact on unrelated to town demographics. The master plan can steer future community makeup through housing policy, town budgets, land use zoning policy, capital investment strategy, etc. And then, so demographics is one, facilities management infrastructure, school facilities long-range plan programming, they're asking about that. Number 3, municipal finance. School budget is such as a major part of town budget. People are asking for more information on school spending and financial projections to better understand school spending to the context of a more holistic view of town spending priorities. So
who's going to supply?
So what would they like?
So they would like that from us.
From us,
From
Carlisle?
GMS or
From our school committee to.
You mean the region or Carlisle?
No, Carlisle. This is for master planning.
She
Sorry,
switched gears.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So they would, good.
So I just want to get the list. I heard that there's a lot there, but I heard
Yeah,
categories. Demographics, facilities planning, municipal
Finance, Carlisle character and culture, how academic mission, strategy, delivery integrates with other town activities and resources. Can Carlisle become more of a learning lab? This will impact the way we consider programming and use ideas for various places and programs inside the town. So how they're going
title of that one was character and culture?
Culture, yeah, Carlisle character and culture.
Okay, and the 5th one?
And the 5th one is sustainability.
Okay, thank you.
So 2
And
questions.
I will forward that for.
Yeah. Well, one is, do they already have, you said compare data, so do they have data that they want to send us that we compare with our data, or they just want us to give data and know?
They want us to give them our input.
Our input, but in other words, are we editing a document that they have, or are we providing those categories?
We are providing our own information to them.
Right, so I think, who chairs is that, Jen Cornell, or who chairs that?
Yes, Jen.
So she should email the chair with her request. I don't think this should be
I think
anecdotal
that crossed
thing.
my desk,
I think this should come chair to chair.
and I'm confused as to what they actually want, what they're looking for. So here's what I would,
We have a history of Carlisle.
so here's what
I
I
think in my
would,
living room.
I would posit that I would draft something, and I would bring it to this group to see if that,
Yeah.
if what I've drafted, because I read that and I wasn't sure what they were asking for. I
Yeah, I
don't
would
know
share
what
that.
they're
So how are
asking.
you gonna draft it if you're not sure what they're asking?
Just gonna
Well,
draft, I'm
I'm
gonna
not
draft what I
responsible.
think they're asking for, and then see, no, I
And
could
a
ask
lot-
Jan, but.
Yeah, and a lot of this information is actually coming from our visioning committee meetings. For example, there were.
Well, no, because we're not generating information about demographics or facilities.
No,
planning or
not
municipal
not
finance.
those two, but we're
Culture,
talking about
culture.
Carlisle character and culture, so. and
But
then-
those are opinions, so you've got 2 categories of things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's maybe 3. There's purely fact-based information,
Mm.
which I don't know why they would need it from us. They ought to be able to get that anywhere, but that's fine. Then there's
I think that-
quasi-factual, like how do you manage facilities? That's sort of a narrative you know, that's a narrative.
But I think I think
They were
my
asking about
recognition,
school
my
choice
remembrance
and
of what they
medical.
wrote
Yeah.
was more along the lines of, like, remember 2 or 3 years ago when Josh was talking about that long-term replacement plan
Yeah,
for,
right.
for capital and
Okay,
for
but it's still a
facilities?
narrative.
Yeah,
right.
so they want more information about what our plan
Right,
is.
and that makes sense.
long-term, yeah.
And then the third category is almost completely opinion or anecdote, right? I
Yeah.
mean, what's your view of the cultural folk, I mean, I don't know what the question is.
The fourth one, well, they're looking at how academic mission, strategy, delivery
No, this is
integrates
Carlisle
with
asking for Carlisle.
activities and resources. Can Carlisle become more of
No,
a
she
learning
switched gears, we
lab?
didn't know.
We're talking about
This will
Carlisle.
impact the way we consider programming and use of,
You know.
and use ideas for very specific. So this was from the visioning.
Is the general thrust of the request that they want to integrate? And that the master planning and the visioning
Right.
should basically identify areas of commonality and get on the same page?
Yes.
Is that the general idea?
Yes.
I'm not sure that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that they're developing a master plan, and the school is a big stakeholder, and they want the input from the school's perspective on
To see how it fits into what other
how,
things come
you know,
up.
how often you're gonna replace your roof. Like, that's an input into their capital plan, because we do a lot of roofs, right?
The first one was interesting, though. The first one is,
They asked about MEDCO and school choice.
Is that the
Like,
first
what
one?
yeah, that's the demographics. They want to know from us what we, how we are looking at those enrollment projections and solutions, because they're going to be looking then.
solutions, so when they get into solutions, because they equate it with
Finance.
housing and
Finances.
zoning and how they may create zoning bylaws that allow for more, like that one actually feels like it's.
Right, because
Right, but I think-
we're asking about
Connected.
cluster, like bigger cluster, allowing for bigger cluster zoning if that's even viable in Carlisle due to, our wetlands.
So given that they're
So
taking
which-
this big chunk, this big mission, and we are, 2/3 of the budget, well, we're not, but we're some big chunk of the budget, and a lot of residents have children in the system. Isn't it worth her like coming here and like talking to us about what she really wants before we start just
Yeah.
ferrying data over there? Because I worry that,
It's gonna
these
be-
are two big initiatives, and they're kind of,
Should Civic Moxie
Should
come
we,
over?
should we,
Okay.
should we sit with her? Should we schedule like a sub-meeting?
I don't know, it's a sub-meeting or put on the agenda, I don't know how much agenda stuff we have. What's their deadline?
Well, they're collecting all this information on their, March 4th, they have another big public meeting, so
They
this is
want it before
definitely.
March 4th?
Oh. Yikes. All right, so forget that.
So
Well, the
maybe if
table
you
discussions are
and
happening now, and they've been happening
Yeah.
the
what
past
if
2 weeks.
you and
so
I sit
it's-
down with Jan
Yeah,
and say
maybe
like,
she-
what are we
Yeah,
looking for?
collect
Yeah,
the-
let's talk about it.
Yeah, do that, get a little.
Because I don't
fidelity.
think we're going to have any final solutions. Metco and school choice is something that is in discussions, and
Yeah.
there's nothing.
No, but they would want to know, we could say, we don't have a position. I don't think you want to,
An
I don't think you want to
organization, a
get ahead of your
company, that
skis
this is
on
their
Echo.
business,
You just say we're-
like, should have been a little more ahead of the,
Yeah,
the outreach ought to have happened earlier.
Right.
I think it
That's
seems
right.
that this was only something they discovered through their conversations,
Right.
that the school
Maybe, yeah.
is a significant piece of
Yeah,
the, of the town.
No, that's come up in every
But
conversation
We've
I've
been
been
trying
in.
to keep it a
No,
secret.
Are you
Yeah,
guys
all
both in
the-
that?
I would have hoped they,
They've been trying to reach different groups of.
they reached out to the CEF in
CEF.
December, or November even, and, which is such a
Early.
minor piece of the town.
But we've been, like, so we attended a meeting back in beginning of January with all the town, Chief Fisher and Chief
Oh, right, yeah.
Sorrows and
Yeah.
DP, everybody was there, and we talked, and, schools being a major part of it, they understood that. And then we've been involved with the advisory, not the steering committee, but on the advisory side, so I think they've heard that piece. I think they may be hearing all the conversations
Yeah.
now, kind of coming up with these are the key elements that they think they need some more information on.
So I think it's a great idea if the two of you get
Set a
more clarity,
meeting.
and then you can draft something for us to look at.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you, Eva. Anything else then?
I guess that, this subcommittee for the special education, we have met and we are working together with Laurie to get a better understanding of what other districts are doing. So work is getting done, is on its way.
Okay. All right, any other committee reports? Or, sorry, liaison reports? The only thing I had would have been from municipal facilities, but that's, your meeting with Tim Goddard anyway, so, I don't have anything
I
else.
think we met with FinCom since the last meeting. Did we meet FinCom since the last meeting? I think so. It was pretty
Don't
recent.
think so. I think
I had that meeting with,
we had the June 22nd meeting.
But wait a minute.
yeah,
No big deal. I think it's.
okay.
I can't remember.
All right, and then we have 5 little warrants.
I actually have the number for that final warrant,
Okay,
warrant
Yeah, we know
number.
with FinCom, we talked about, basically the big thing was the long-term caps. Do you move
Yeah.
that $80,000 of recurring technology stuff over?
Have they decided? They haven't decided.
When was that? No, they haven't.
No.
Yeah, right, that was Monday the 27th.
all right, so Nancy has a number for us for,
4920, it was for $131,870.25.
okay, all right. Oh, we already voted on the policies. Darn, we're ahead. I got so excited.
Yeah.
Citizens' comments.
Oh, I have a question.
Please say your name and your street.
My name is Cynthia Sorn, and I live on Rutland Street, 433 Rutland Street. What is the name of the candidate, the finalist, I'm sorry, for business?
Business manager.
And,
Ann Mahan.
is it ANN or AN?
No, I think MAA.
I have it written down right now, ANNE,
I'll take that. How do you spell the last name?
MAHAN.
Okay. And I was just.
I'm more confident in the last name than the E.
Okay, and I was just remembering that the school committee voted previously on finalizing the approval of the business manager, so you're gonna bring her here in March, and you're gonna vote on her while she's here in March? Was that the plan? I just wanted to know.
I would believe that,
Yeah.
they have to,
We have to
Yeah.
bless her.
I think,
No, they do have to vote. No,
Yeah.
they actually do have to vote. I
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
you are gonna introduce her, have her here, and then you're gonna.
when do you
vote.
anticipate finalizing the contract package?
things are pretty much finalized. I mean, we're in a good place.
Okay. I mean, should we hold a special meeting to approve that contract?
Let's see if Jonathan has
Yeah.
a special meeting, we can
It would
put
be
a
nice
bunch
if we could
together.
piggyback, but Jonathan's will take a longer time.
Yeah.
This is gonna happen like this week, right? You're gonna try to finalize this contract?
Yeah, I think I can, yes.
Is it ready around next week? No, you're away.
But I can always call in.
Yeah. Eva, are you here next week?
Oh,
No, you're not.
What are we
I
looking,
don't think
what
we have a quorum, we can't,
We don't.
do you
I
think,
think you have to vote it,
You-
right?
vote the contract or vote her position?
You're looking at me.
I
know.
think it's a school
I think-
committee hire.
You
I
have
think
no
it's
idea
your,
how
you
much
you're hired.
appoint, you
It's
hire.
our hire, so we have to vote the
You can vote
contract.
her, but that includes the contract. yeah.
Right, or can we deputize the chair to just sign it, is the question.
No.
No.
You have to vote.
I think you gotta have a
on the
meeting.
contract.
I think you gotta have a meeting, and you better plan it for, right away after we get back.
And the reason we couldn't do it in March would be,
No, you do it, well, you do it as soon as you
You do it
can.
in March, do you wanna do it in front of her?
You wanna wait, you wanna make her wait a month?
David
You don't wanna-
objects.
Yeah, I wouldn't want
It's
to
right
make her
there.
wait. You might lose her.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's just crappy,
I know,
right?
it's-
It
So
would
you-
be, it would be an action item at the end,
Yeah,
right?
right, we could.
No, but do you wanna wait till March 11th?
Meet and then leave,
To
right?
vote
That's okay,
on
we're
it?
gonna vote on it.
Yes.
Sorry.
He's gonna reach an agreement like now, right?
Too much money.
You'd have to say pending school committee approval.
that's what I've,
Yeah.
that's what I've told us, here's the plan, we just have to.
It's up to you. I
Have
mean, I
a-
think it's a 5-minute.
How did it go with Lori Bruce? Did you do the same thing?
We didn't follow the protocol,
Yeah.
it wasn't right. We should have done it, and we didn't
What
do it.
did you do? I can't.
I think you signed it, and then we had to sort of backfill on
As long as you say pending approval. it's
I don't-
okay.
that. No?
I don't think we ever had a backfill on Lori's.
Okay.
But
Well-
she was introduced to the committee and then approved on the same night, with no hitch.
I believe that's true, but she may have already signed her employment agreement. That's the part that we took out of sequence. I recall that we didn't do it right.
All right,
That might
so
have been
the-
bad on me, but I think the right thing is, we should approve
Okay.
her and her agreement. It's a school committee hire.
So it's pending, the agreement should say pending school committee.
Well, certainly, that's what Jim needs to convey.
No,
but
so
then if you're the
No,
candidate.
on
She
the
understands
You don't wanna
that.
wait
Yeah, she
3
understands
weeks
that.
for that.
Yeah. So what we need to do, I'm just thinking through, we need to have a meeting where the committee, I present the documentation for the
Right.
candidate,
Mhm.
and I present the contract, and you discuss that and say yes, at which
I
point.
mean, I'm happy to
we can
state
have
in
her
this
sign the
meeting,
contract.
right now, that we interviewed two.
Two is what we.
How many resumes have we had?
Very few resumes, I think we received 8 resumes.
We only, of the 8, we only liked 2 of them, and of the 2, she was hands down the best.
We interviewed 2 people.
Right. I can certainly
There was
state.
one, yeah, there was one resume that was a standout. We interviewed 2 people. The one resume that was a standout turned out to be the person we were looking for.
Oh, good.
And I believe she can seamlessly fill the job. So I have no reservations about hiring her, and because I'm the rep from this group,
The search, yeah.
should take my word for that. But we should look at the contract, and
Right.
make sure we're all comfortable
Yes.
with
You
the
can
contract.
send the contract without comments to each other. I mean, you just can't discuss it.
Okay,
Right.
so you should send
I will
us.
share her resume packet tomorrow,
No
and I will
way.
share the contract,
Right.
proposed contract tomorrow.
Yes,
And
because I'm gonna
then-
get crushed with visioning committee meetings, and I was just like,
So
one
do
more is gonna
we,
be.
but we still can't vote by email, right? We have to.
Of course
vote.
not.
Right.
You can vote on,
But you've got the
remarks.
document, she's here, you can vote on the document and her.
Right, I'm fine with that from a protocol,
Unless
as
you
long
need
as
it.
she's willing to wait for that vote to our next
On
meeting.
March
If she
11th.
seems anxious
she
about
doesn't
it,
seem,
then-
yeah,
then you can call a meeting. Either way. I think
Yeah.
we got it. Okay,
sounds good.
great.
All right, excellent. That's very
I
exciting.
think we're in a good place. I think she's a
Thank you
good
for bringing
person.
that up.
We're in a good place.
All right.
She understands the nuances of,
I'm ready to motion.
Well, she knows
I know.
watch the
I will get
TV.
there.
I'll send this video
As soon
to
as they're all
her.
done, Okay, I'd like to, do I make the motion?
Yes, you do.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn the meeting at 9:12. Wow.
So moved. Hey,
Go
all
home.
right.
At the
Well
house.
played.